Trust is more than just a buzzword. In today's marketing landscape, investing in trust can drive revenue growth. In 2024, Trustpilot commissioned Forrester Consulting, a leading independent research consultancy, to conduct a total economic impact study examining the benefits of using the Trustpilot review platform. Their findings show that interviewed customers who are using Trustpilot to manage their brand reputation achieved an ROI of over 400%. To find out how Trustpilot benefits businesses, visit business.trustpilot.com/calculate ROI.
A brand's relationship with the uniform of a sports team can be an intimate one. Physically, it's as close as you can get to the athletes. Often it's a logo right over their hearts. But it also requires unusual commitment to the team and to its fan base. How brands and teams stitch together relationships is what we'll be talking about today with Jason Miller, Head of Partnerships for Excel Sports Management, on The Marketer's Brief, our weekly discussion of marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. Miller and his team have guided more than a dozen uniform patch deals in recent years. We'll discuss how some of these came together, such as the Philadelphia Phillies and Independence Blue Cross, and the Minnesota Timberwolves and their former partner, Aura. But it's not any two brands that should be getting together, Miller says. There's a reason the Los Angeles Lakers got together with a Korean food company called BB Go, and why GE was the first patch partner of the Celtics. I'm John Springer, senior reporter at Ad Age, and this is the Marketer's Brief podcast. Jason Miller, welcome to the Marketer's Brief podcast.
Thanks for having me, John. Good morning.
Good. So why don't we start? You could tell me a little bit about yourself, your group, and how you got into this business.
Yeah, absolutely. So started my career actually in radio sales up in Boston for the New England Patriots radio network, and parlayed that into a gig with the Miami Dolphins, where I originally was down there to help them bring their radio rights in-house and build out their integrated media division. And when I left, I was running sponsorship, media activation, decided to transition over to the agency side and went to work for Premier Partnerships, Randy Bernstein and Alan Rothenberg, and spent 3 years there before I was brought over to Excel to build out their third-party property representation division, which was about 6.5 years ago when Emilio Collins came over from the NBA. And since arriving, we came out of the gate really, really quickly, quicker than I think a lot of other third-party property groups because of the advent of the NBA jersey patch program. And so we've done, since I've been here, we've overseen 8 successful NBA jersey patch searches, 3 on the MLB side, 1 on the NHL side. We've done front of kit deals for both NWSL and MLS clubs. And so a lot of on uniform branding, but I would say we've also expanded to full service commercial support, stadium naming rights deals. We've done the last 3 MLS stadium naming rights deals, and then recently hired a gentleman overseas to lead our international expansion and announced a couple F1 deals over the last couple of weeks. So it's been a really fun ride. And I would say now we are, if not the leader, one of the leaders in helping organizations optimize the commercial revenue potential of their assets and their opportunities and their inventory.
Yeah. So it raised the question for me, how is what you're doing now like making radio sales for a team back in the old day?
So it's actually a great question. When I came to what was CBS Radio and started selling for the Patriots radio network, a lot of my predecessors realized pretty quickly that we are selling the same inventory air for a much higher price. Now, the audiences were large, but when going to it, you could never really price out a spot during a Patriots game based on the rate, spots and dots wise. Like, it would never be as efficient as drive time radio and things like that. So we had to come up with really creative ideas to kind of wrap around the inventory. And I think that's also what we have to do from an on-uniform branding perspective. You see little to no success with organizations that come out and position this as slapping your logo on a uniform. It really has to be a symbol of you being, if not the most closely connected, alongside the naming rights partner, the most closely connected organization to that team, to that brand, to that property, and to that fan base. And then how you actually activate that, it requires creativity, whether you're talking to a B2B company, a B2C company. So a lot of my early days was around these cause marketing initiatives, which we were a little ahead of it on that, whether it be tackling breast cancer or sacking hunger and working with local communities to use that radio inventory to tell a story. And I think that's what we're doing specifically on the on-uniform branding space and why we've had a lot of success.
Yeah. So, I mean, what makes the jersey sleeve or the jersey front or the side of a helmet an attractive medium for brands?
Well, depending on the organization that you do it with, it can either provide meteoric overnight brand exposure for organizations that desperately need it. And if you have absolutely no brand awareness, it can actually, we've done studies through our Excel Analytics division that it can provide a disproportionate brand impact for your organization if you are relatively unknown to all of a sudden put your logo on these brands and these properties that have global appeal. On a regional basis, you'll see a lot of companies, the original GE deal that was done with the Boston Celtics, that was an organization that, one, they wanted to get a little bit younger, they wanted to be cool, they wanted to be culturally relevant, but they were also moving their headquarters to downtown Boston. And so they had to be relevant to not only business decision makers that might be going to Celtics games and watching the NBA, but also all the talent in that Boston market going to Harvard, going to MIT, and the ability to capture it. So there's really four ways that you'll see an organization really use any major sponsorship, but specifically on the on-uniform branding side. Of course, it's got to be about brand visibility, brand awareness, and what comes with that. But then it's also about how does your sales team use not only the asset, but the relationship with the organization and the ability to interact with their ecosystem in a really meaningful and authentic way to sell more, and then leverage the hospitality to entertain customers they already have in their pipeline. And then, of course, recruiting, retaining, energizing the best employees in that market. It means something to the employees of the companies that do these on uniform branding deals, that their company, when they're watching games with their friends, it's something to be proud of, right? Hey, I'm proud that my company is worn above the heart of Jaylen Brown, the NBA championship team up in Boston. The last piece is obviously the community. Right. When you think about a community partnership with a professional sports organization, I look at it in three ways. It's how can an organization lift up and be kind of ride the coattails of what the team is doing if they have value alignment. At the same time, how can the team make a good day great on some of the things that the company is already doing, bringing their mascot, bringing their players, Celticsifying it or however you want to say that. And then the last piece is, where can you find shared values and shared alignment with that organization to go out and create new programs that truly impact the community? So those are, John, I think the four key value drivers. And then depending on where a company is in their life cycle, they may value the branding much more. They may value the community much more. They may value the hospitality much more. It just all depends on goals and objectives. But it's a challenging search to run, because not only do you have to find a brand that is willing to make the investment, you also have to have a brand that the organization feels good about, right? These owners, while they're stewards of a brand, they're not owners of a brand. They are owners of the business. And so they have to feel really good about the organizations that they're getting in bed with as well.
Yeah. So let's wind back for a second. You mentioned that there was a good awareness play for some unknown brands. Are there examples in the world that you could point to?
Yeah. One of the deals that I did with my friend Yaniv was Aura, which was an identity theft and digital identity protection company that was fairly new. They had recently rebranded and they needed something. They did not have 10, 20, $30 million to do a massive brand campaign. They needed something that could get them overnight brand awareness and exposure. And at the same time that the Timberwolves had drafted Anthony Edwards, and we've seen what he has become with his performance during the Olympics, they were also in the midst of an acquisition, which of course is a big topic of conversation over the past several weeks and months and years between A-Rod and Mark Lowry and buying the team. And so there was so much buzz and attention. So what we were able to do is we were able to combine the announcement of Aura becoming the jersey patch partner of the Minnesota Timberwolves with A-Rod buying the team and all the fanfare and A-Rod holding up the jersey as that happened. So that's just one that comes to mind as something that was, again, just overnight meteoric brand awareness that Aura was able to get through that patch partnership.
Okay, so you get a request to do a jersey patch for a brand. Where do you start looking?
Yeah, so we have a really good process. We have never failed We've been hired 15 plus times across all the major leagues to sell on uniform branding positions. And I'm really proud that we've never failed. And it's because we have an incredible process. It starts with a full immersion of the organization, John, because before we go out and prospect, we're going to call all the Fortune 500 companies in the market. We're going to call all the unicorns in that market. We're going to call all the obvious usual suspects in that region. And we're, of course, going to go to current partners. I mean, if you look across the landscape, most of the deals we've done have not been current partners, but in general, there's a large percentage of current partners that say, wait a minute, I've been investing for however long in this organization. I want that inventory. The team wants new revenue, right? But these current partners want to be a part of it. And you see that all the time. So we know the usual suspects. Where we need to figure out our hunting ground is through these immersion sessions where we meet with the community team. We meet with the basketball or baseball or football operations team. We meet with the marketing team, and we try to uncover these unique hooks and angles that allow us to prospect with a purpose. Going back to the Timberwolves example, one example I can give you on how we do that, we met with the Timberwolves, and what we recognized was members of their basketball operations team were working way ahead of the COVID vaccine program, and they were looking to figure out ways to do things in the local community around that, and they were absolute leaders in that space. And so we thought, wow, Minnesota is actually one of the healthiest markets in the country. They have one of the biggest, if not the biggest, health insurance company that was a partner of theirs in United Health Group, headquartered right down the road. This seems like something that could be very unique for an organization that wants to lean into that storyline when obviously COVID was incredibly relevant. And so we had a lot of very interesting conversations around that. So we want to meet with these properties and figure out, like, what are the things that make you unique, and what could a company use your organization and a relationship with you to tell a story that they couldn't tell with any other team in any other league. And once we have those unique hooks, we create a master prospect list that, again, is going to have all the usual suspects in the local region, all their current partners, and then a huge list of these companies that fall into all these different unique hooks and angles and reasons why somebody on my team would give them a call. And then once we have that list, we score it, right? We make sure that we have, hey, who are the first 100 companies that we should spend our time on? And then we go out, and it's cold, hard work. I mean, sometimes you get lucky, John. You call a company, and ironically, with the Boston Bruins, Rapid7, I called their CEO cold. First company I called. They ended up doing the deal, but that deal took 10 months to do. And in between that, my team called 500 other companies along the way, which, by the way, is the reason why I'm trying to get into more all-in engagements and engagements where we can do more and lift up the entire commercial revenue program, as opposed to focusing on one asset, because we do all this work, right? And we do one deal. It's like we want to help the organization do 10 deals.
Makes sense. So we're speaking with Jason Miller of Excel. We'll be right back after this, and we'll talk about some of the specific team deals that he's worked out.
Did you know that improving trust and reputation with Trustpilot can have tangible business benefits? With Trustpilot, interviewed customers experienced benefits of $1.2 million over 3 years. This is what Forrester Consulting has discovered in the 2024 commissioned Total Economic Impact Study of using the Trustpilot review platform. To find out how Trustpilot drove growth for its customers, visit business.trustpilot.com/calculate ROI.
So, Jason, let's talk about the deal with the Phillies. How did that come about? And when you went out to do that, how soon did IBX come into the picture?
Really soon. Actually, before we came into the picture. Just to back up, when the MLB jersey patch program was ratified by the owners and the league, we went out and we struck a deal with the LA Angels. They had Shohei Ohtani at the time. We loved that project. They were at the time thinking about building a new stadium, which offered some of those other opportunities that I talked about potentially down the road. And we worked on that. And at the same time, we talked to the Phillies. I live outside Philadelphia in a town called Berwyn. So I love doing projects in my hometown. I'm from Boston. There's a reason why we've done 2 Celtic searches in the Bruins and advised several brands in that market. I like to do things that are local to me that I'm passionate about. And one of them was the Phillies. But at the time, they decided to go in a different direction, work with another firm. They were not successful in their search. They did have discussions with IBX at the time, and IBX opted to do a large partnership with the organization. But as time went on and we hit the marketplace and we started talking to several other organizations, IBX is such a close knit partner of the Phillies. And as we started to get close with other organizations and the ship was about to sail, IBX ultimately decided that this was too good of an opportunity to pass up in an incredibly important market for them. And it was a deal that was done at the very top between the owner, John Middleton, and the top brass at Blue Cross. So it was a long search. It required a lot of work. We talked to every company in Philadelphia. We did several other deals on behalf of the Phillies during that time. But what our process allowed the Phillies to do is to go back to them and speak with them about this and make sure that before we move forward with another partner and the opportunity went away, you know, are you sure you don't want to do this? And I think that conversation, of course, netted in a really, really amazing deal with a partner that is so focused on the community and so aligned. And even, in the marketplace, the colors, the look, the fans are happy, John's happy. It's just a great partnership. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes we go out and we create a marketplace for an organization, and ultimately there's a local partner or a current partner that decides, hey, I don't want this, I don't want to lose this. And they ultimately end up stepping up. And that's what happened with IBX.
Okay. You reminded me that some of these deals in MLB, for example, really seem to come across gradually, right? There were only a couple teams at first. Maybe there's a few more now. I still don't think it's throughout the league. How would you explain sort of why? Is there a reticence from the teams, or is there reticence among brands and advertisers to sort of jump in?
I think there's a couple factors that have influenced, I guess you'd call it, a slower rollout on the MLB side. Remember, with the NBA program, there were many teams that did not have partners during the initial season. So it took a little bit of time, and there were a number of different factors and reasons why that was the case. I think on the MLB side, it really comes down to two things. One is timing. So while I think the teams knew this was coming, and a lot of teams were having quiet conversations without authorization to do so with brands that they said, hey, you're a close partner. If this were to happen, would you be interested? And I think you saw a lot of those deals get done pretty quickly, and they were with current partners. A lot of the early MLB deals that were done with current partners of the club. These processes take a ton of time. I would say on average, a jersey patch search has taken us between 8 and 9 months to get done. The MLB program, if I remember it correctly, was done at a time where it only gave the clubs less than 6 months to actually go out and secure partners. So that's factor one, right? It takes time to build the collateral, build the story, figure out how you want to price it, how you want to package it. And so you saw that. I think you also had a lot of clubs that had big eyes in terms of what they thought their patch could garner. And so the early proposals that went out the door across the MLB jersey patch program were a lot more than where the deals ultimately landed. Now, the program is a huge success, despite the fact that there are a handful of clubs that have not selected partners, have not found the right partner. The average deal size is great. I think it looks great. And I think you've seen a lot of current partners and local partners team up, which is something that I would expect with baseball. Short of what's happening with Shohei and obviously the Japanese following, the NBA is still the most global pro sports league in the United States. And that's why you've seen companies like Wish, companies like BBGO that have come in and have made investments in the NBA because of the international appeal of the league. But on the MLB side, it's been, I think at one point there were 15 of the 17 deals were done with companies that were based in the home market of the club. So a lot of local, a lot of regional, but still big investments coming out of those regions. And I would expect that most of the other clubs, with all the momentum happening with baseball right now, I mean, baseball's hot. Attendance is up, viewership's up. They've got the Dream World Series. It's an incredible platform. And so I would expect that those deals will get done. But again, shameless plug for Excel. You got to hire the right agency. You got to run the right process. And it's hard sometimes to do these deals in-house when you also have to manage your entire sponsorship portfolio beyond this big sale that, when you go out to sell something big, right? When you sell your company, you hire somebody to do that. The president of the United States hires an economist to help him in terms of how he manages the economy. When you have the biggest thing that you've ever had to sell, you need to manage it correctly. And people, nobody woke up today, John, saying, I want to buy a sponsorship. Maybe one person did, right? But for the most part, you just don't. And so you need to run the right process, and you need to have the right team in place to get these deals done.
Biggest thing that they have to sell? How would it compare to like a stadium deal?
It depends. Actually, most of the on-uniform branding deals happening are more than the naming rights deals. Why? A lot of these naming rights deals were done when naming rights deals weren't a thing. In the mid 90s, late 90s, even into the early 2000s, you look at these naming rights deals that were done, and 20 years later, they're completely underwater. You have clubs that are trying to get out of them. I don't want to specifically mention any teams, but I know multiple organizations that look at their standing against their peer set in major top 5, top 10 media markets that have naming rights deals that are weighing them down. And it's the sole reason why they're not in the top quartile of their league from a sponsorship perspective. That makes it even more important for those organizations to get big jersey patch deals. You also have organizations that can't even sell naming rights. The Boston Celtics, right? When we went out and we did that search twice, not only do they not have naming rights, they don't own the building. The Bruins do. So that presents other challenges for a sponsor that says, wow, I'm going to do a deal here, but I can't even have the XYZ suite level. I can't have fixed build outs in the home territory or the home building of the organization I'm investing with. So I think naming rights is a really scarce asset right now. There's not a lot of it out there. And so that's why you see deals like the Northwest deal happening and some deals that actually we're working on at Excel. But that's the factor, John. That's why it is the biggest. And by the way, it's also home and away. So when you watch the Phillies on the road, Citizens Bank is nowhere to be found, right? So you got 162 games, 81 of which their naming rights partner is not a part of. So that's also what makes the patch so special. It's the only thing that a team can give to a sponsor to give them guaranteed exposure when they play on the road.
Yeah. It's always on Harper's right shoulder. Is that right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. What do you say to the fans that see this as some kind of intrusion upon the sort of purity of the uniform? And, there's, I guess the worst you could say, little value for the fans in deals like this.
For the most part, I'd say that's accurate in terms of the value that's coming back to the fans. There are some partners that give benefits to their fans as part of their partnership. The jersey patch, it's hard, right? You look at the American Express that my friend Shiz just did, expanding their deal from a regional deal to a global deal, and everything that American Express is going to be able to do for their customers through that partnership. There's, of course, the ability to do that with professional sports organizations, certain organizations, but it's not uniform. And yeah, I understand where the fans are coming from, but at the same time, European football, global football, this is something that has been a part of that ecosystem since, before you and I were born, John. And there have been studies, actually Adidas did a study, and this study actually is part of the reason why the NBA jersey patch program came about. Adidas did a study that found that fans thought if there wasn't a logo on a football jersey, that it looked empty, it looked blank. Merchandise sales weren't as good, right? And so the original kind of development of the NBA jersey patch program was Adidas coming in with a Chicago Bulls jersey with Coca-Cola across it. And of course, everybody is shocked by it at first. And Mr. Reinsdorf is appalled. But then it's like, wait, how much money could we make off this? And then it started this long, multiple year process of, okay, how do we sell it? What categories are we going to sell? How are we going to price it? How are we going to package? Is the league going to sell it? Are the teams going to sell it? It's really complicated. And you've seen some leagues roll their program out really well and others that haven't. And so I get where the fans could feel a certain type of way about these traditional uniforms, especially the sweater in hockey, which has so much tradition. It's steeped in tradition, the entire sport. But it's just the way the world is going. You're going to see logos on your college football team's field. You're going to see logos on your college basketball team's jersey. And I think it's just important that it doesn't go too far to the point where the assets have a diminishing level of return because there's no scarcity and there's way too much inventory. There's always going to be a partner for the Lakers. There's always going to be a partner for the Celtics. But where this could start to hurt organizations is the lower end teams when they start competing against Duke basketball and UNC basketball, right? You're bringing in so much more opportunity. And that can ultimately, when you lose scarcity, you lose demand and pricing goes down, which is a good thing for brands, but a bad thing, I guess, for fans that don't want to see it because it's not going away.
Well, Jason Miller, real pleasure talking to you. Thanks for coming by.
Real pleasure talking to you, John. Thanks for having me on.
That was Jason Miller, Head of Partnerships for Excel Sports Management, and I'm John Springer, Senior Reporter at Ad Age. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Ciardio, and remind you that you can subscribe to The Marketer's Brief wherever you get your podcasts. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.